Hi there. I'm Rose Kavanaugh, also Hernandez by, and so in Mexico, I am Rosalind Hernandez or Rosalinda Hernandez. Anyways, here we are in my backyard in Cihuatanejo, Mexico, and I want to tell you the story of the Casa Hogar, the place of refuge for at-risk seniors in Las Pozas, which is about a 12-minute drive from my home here. And I'm going to tell the story as best as I recall it. It doesn't mean that I have everybody mentioned that needs to be mentioned or that I haven't missed out something, but I'll do the best because I think it's important for future reference to record uh, the grace and the mercy of God and how He supplied and did what He always does, provides for something that He actually is a part of. And I really believe that God was in this from the beginning. Um, it wasn't easy. It doesn't mean that when we do something for God that it's going to be easy. In fact, more than likely, it's going to be very difficult. But in obedience, if we're truly followers of Jesus Christ, we will stay on that path no matter what happens. And in the building of Bet Shalom, lots of stuff did happen. There was really some miracles occurred, and there was also some hard things. So I'm going to tell that story as I remember it. In the year, I'm going to say around 2006, we had arrived here in 2002. So in the years between 2002 and 2006, I, a retired registered nurse from Canada, started to visit in the hospital as a result of someone calling me from an accident site and asking me to go there. It was something that I had wanted to do, wasn't quite sure how to get into the hospital since nobody knew me, but God knew how. And so He arranged that I would have a way to get in. Unfortunately, the accident proved to be uh, mortal. The man, who was an American man, did die, and that part was very sad. The part that wasn't um, sad was that it was the beginning of a ministry that had many arms. After my initiation to the emergency at the General Hospital in Mexico, I was able to um, go in and be recognized. And some of the staff started to ask me to participate in a variety of ways. And thus began the beginnings. I think I'm a bit redundant there, of ministry in the medical field. As I visited in the hospital, a young lady named Gabby Aguirre wanted to come along too because she said she had always liked medical things. I think at one time she had actually worked in a dentist's office, and she had a heart for the weak, and so she came along as well. And we worked separately. I did one side, and she couldn't always go the same day as I did. And she wanted to teach a group of young men and women how to care about other people. And this she did, bringing one or two of them along whenever she went to do her visiting. In the process of time, and it wasn't too long before we saw that in the hospital, we were seeing not infrequently seniors who had been brought to hospital and left there. Sometimes they had family and sometimes they did not. And they laid in those hospital beds waiting for someone to pick them up or for some place to go. And as we realized that, we started to knock on doors and see if there was anything available at all for these people who seemed to have no one. We talked to DEEF, which is the organization that we would call probably in the US and Canada social welfare, that takes care of, that's their job, to look out for people from birth to death when they are struggling. And that's what we did. We started to knock on doors, only to discover there was really nothing locally available for seniors. As a nurse, I've worked with seniors. I had worked with seniors in long-term care and in extended care, and with my mom in her end-of-life years as well. So I was familiar with the difficult uh, times there can be in caring for seniors, whether it's in your home or in an institution, whatever the setting. It's not an easy job. And I also was very aware that seniors are neglected. They are a neglected, vulnerable sector of society. That even when there's a family not far away, the senior can be forgotten in a nursing home and visited very seldom. Particularly if they get dementia, and the families often will say, "Oh, they won't know who I am anyways, so why would I visit?" All of these hurt my heart because we all hope that someday, whether we have all our faculties about us or not, we hope that we will not be forgotten. Probably most of us have lived a life of hard work and providing for those that we loved, particularly our children. In this part of Mexico that we had certainly not expected, because everyone had heard of family same brush. There are still families in Mexico who wouldn't think of having someone else look after their senior person. But as time went on and we knew that there just wasn't any place in Zihuatanejo, and as Gabby herself went and pretty much threatened Deef to find a place for these seniors, eventually Deef did provide a place that was pretty much a dump. But we decided that we had to start somewhere. As Christians, we felt like God was telling us to get with it and to provide where we saw the need that God had put in front of us. So we did that. We started to get this place ready, and it was a lot of work. And Deef did do some work. We made a ramp. We got rid of a tree whose roots were causing the rain when it came to come in below as well as above, because the roof was not good. And but what we did need for Deef to do was to replace the roof, because we didn't at the time have a lot of money. We did in 2007 create an association, and that association still didn't have any money, but those people kicked in some money so that we could get started, at least in being a formal group that was going to advocate for seniors at risk. These people were Jody Collins. She's a pediatrician who actually is a missionary sometimes in town. I think her home base for sure is here in Zihuatanejo. Gordon Butler, who was from Youngstown, or was from Youngstown, Alberta, now from Red Deer. Jacob Sotelo was a pastor here of a Mexican church, and he's now in Samachique as a missionary in Chihuahua. Myself, and also Joan McKay, who was also of Ixtapa, which is just a few miles from here. All these people put their hand to the plow, kicked in a few dollars, and decided that they were going to be a part of this association. So as we continued to work with Deef, we could see that this probably was not going to work for them because it's a political institution, or for us. And within the year, they had went their way. That was their decision, and we were not unhappy, because we had realized that politics and religion really don't mix very well. and so we started to look to rent or buy a lot. We didn't know. We were just trusting God to show us. And we looked at a lot of land and a lot of places. And even where there were possibilities, there were so many obstacles that we felt unsafe. So as the Lord provided, and as very few people believed in what we were trying to achieve, some lots were purchased in Las Pozas. Now, Las Pozas is kind of remote from Zihuatanejo. And I'll be honest, I wasn't feeling that it was a bad thing to be remote, because there are difficult times in Siwa. where when some foreigners are involved, people have the sense that there must be money. And that, of course, is not true. We were really struggling to, number one, purchase the land, and number two, proceed from there. But little by little, and I do mean little by little, this plan and vision became a reality. In the meantime, Gabby had taken in a man who had no place to go. He had family, but for whatever reason, and we know now that lots of times there are reasons why families want nothing to do with their senior family member. But this man had diabetes and was a double amputee. And I don't recall whether he was blind, but he had basically no care in the shack that he lived in. And so I don't know, I think probably it was as a hospital patient, I'm not sure, that Gabby encountered him. And when it came time for him to have a place to go to, there was no place to send him. She took him home, her and her husband and her two little girls. And there he was for, I believe, about 3 months. Gabby had a big heart and did not like to see people hurting. She's the same one that worked with the young people's group. She did end up having to go away, and her husband became quite ill. And so she wasn't able to participate, I'm sure, in the way that she had hoped to do long term. But God's plans are not always our plans. Don Gerardo was the name of the older gentleman, had to go back to his home with strict reminders from Gabby to care for their dad. It appears as though in short order he became sick in similar conditions to which he was originally found and went to hospital. Now, Don Gerardo didn't die on his own. There was one or two or more of these young people who did stay with him until his death. He knew the Lord, and so we have hope for him that in eternity we'll see him again, whole, with 2 legs, or however God has arranged for us to be. He will be 100% whole. So the question became, as funds came in, how could we get enough to get started? A fellow who was an architect from the States wanted to contribute to this vision, and he was able to draw a design that was hacienda style, and it was perfect for our purposes. So that was a gift from Mr. Senor Cermeño, who lives somewhere in California. We've lost touch with him, but he has a huge part in helping us get this done. I think his name was Antonio Cermeño. And then other people, one by one, felt that this was something worth doing. And then Elisa Duncan in 2009, a couple of years went by, she decided to do a bicycle ride. She had told us that she couldn't really see doing the caregiver kind of work because that wasn't something she felt she was gifted in, but she was very much an athlete, and she took it upon herself, and someone from another organization went with her, and she rode her bicycle all the way from Zihuatanejo to Oklahoma City. And there she ended this journey and created awareness and some funding, some significant funding, so that in 2010, June of 2010, we could get started on the actual construction. Now, by this time, we had to get new architects because Antonio was gone back to California, and we needed to have somebody on our side promoting what we were doing. And that was when Andres and his crew came alongside and helped us immeasurably. He and his partner went with us to see the municipality, to see the state, so that everybody would know what it was we had planned to do to build a home, a safe, secure place for at-risk seniors. Some of them would be abandoned. So I still recall the visit with Alejandro Bravo as we presented the project to him. And the revised design, it was very much the same with a few additions and just some changes. he said, I've had 3 presentations for a home for seniors. He said, and this one is the most organized and the best presentation of them all. He said, I'm going to put my political strength behind what you are doing. He knew we had no intention of being involved in a party, a political party, or putting up a banner, but he was willing to put his name behind what we were doing. And as a result, in 2011, he did, um, and we had already started to build, as I said, in June 2010. He did, in September of 2011, do a dinner out there and invited all of his business friends and all the people that might have an interest in what we were doing and who might get behind us. His wife also collected some funds from her friends, and so they put in 80,000 pesos. I remember that very well. And we had a chance to tell these people what we were doing and why we were doing it. God was never left out of it. He is the reason for everything that we do, and to him is the glory and the honor. And you know, faith, there were always naysayers. There were people who didn't believe that this could be achieved by such a handful of people. And there were times when I myself thought, what am I doing? Lord, if you don't want us to do this, please stop me, and I will be willing to eat humble pie and return all the donations. But it seemed that whenever I would say that, there would be a significant donation to allow us to continue. And we had made, as an association, a promise to God that we would never go in debt, and that if we reached the point when there was no money, we would stop building. And indeed, after the first phase, because we divided it into really 3 phases, I guess, we did have to stop. But we had 4 rooms ready for habitation. And during this event of Alejandro Bravo, who was the mayor of the town at the time, there was a young man there who either was owner or co-owner of a cement company, Elu Hall Concrete. And at that time, his promise to us publicly was that he would put the roof on, the cement roof, on the 4 existing rooms for residents. And he did just that. He was not in politics at the time. He was the owner of a business. And we thank God for that, because today that very man, Jorge Sanchez, is the mayor. He has always been extremely supportive of Bet Shalom. And, although we don't believe, or I don't personally believe, that politics and religion can blend that well, we certainly have had some good friends in government who stood beside us, and without asking anything in return, without asking for us to put up a banner or anything like that, they have been. We also had individuals who were extremely helpful in the process of building Bet Shalom. I'm going to mention by name, particularly Murray Edwards, who continued to give, and he was an older person himself. He continued, I would say, sacrificially to give so that we would never stop building. And he's gone. He's with the Lord now, and his reward is there. But as many Murray Edwards as there were also the people who really thought very little of this vision of ours. And if it were not for God and his mercy and his grace, they could have been correct. But God in his mercy took somebody like myself, who knew nothing about construction, who nothing about design, really. I just had a heart for these old people who had no place to go and who needed care of a specific kind. And I did have that kind of experience. So just about every day during construction, I had to give up other activities and go out and sit in the office and draw up policies and rules and regulations for what I hoped would be the future of Bet Shalom. Some of them, those rules and regulations that I spent hours on, are ones that we use today, and some of them had to be rethought as things happen and as you bring new people on board. We have been so thankful to God and so thankful to individuals. I'll mention one other name, that I think is significant, and that's Sean Cormack from Oklahoma. Sorry, Sean, if you don't want me mentioning your name, but you have made such a difference. We were able to finish the rooms on the far side, and all our rooms are finished. And I read once that if your organization succeeds, it won't be because of a huge number of people who believe in your ministry or in what you're doing. It will probably be because of one or two major donors, givers, believers who in the vision and in the mission. And that indeed has proved to be the case. Little by little, Bet Shalom has become known in the community as a place of safety for seniors. We have a long list. Elisa, what she did in 2009 created a lot of attention, not just here, but in the US and Canada. And then in 2017, when someone said, you need to finish the journey, she did. Her, and this time Cynthia Lopez joined her, and they traveled from Oklahoma City to Red Deer, Alberta. And as a result, and even before that, Balmoral Chapel of Red Deer, Alberta has been extremely supportive of this home for at-risk seniors. Today, we've had, I haven't counted how many seniors that we have had. It hasn't been a huge number, but we do have a large number of people still sitting on the waiting list. All of the rooms are completed. We have room for 20 residents. They're very simple. The floors are basic concrete, non-slip. The bathrooms are the same, very basic, wheelchair accessible. A doctor came early, Dr. Valdovinos, who is a gerontologist, and he told me, make sure you put bars, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, and all of the things that listened to all these people who had experience in dealing with the senior. It's been amazing how God brought people together, and not all of them were believers in Jesus Christ, and they knew that we were. They knew that we were doing this because of God and his son, Jesus Christ, and that we believed that this was a calling on our hearts. So in 2017, Elisa did that trip, and we were there at Balmoral Chapel when on her arrival with Cynthia. And we thank God that Elisa was able to do this twice in order to continue to raise funds and raise attention. With the funds that Elisa raised on that journey, we were able to purchase a van for Bet Shalom that could transport our seniors to an activity or an event. And so far, it's been mostly to the beach so that they can get away from the Bet Shalom setting, which is set away from the ocean and more towards the mountain. So it's a blessing to have that van. And also with the money she raised, we were able to purchase this very small vehicle that could be used for purchases and for doing purchases and for taking seniors to their appointments should that there be a need. So that's part of. Now I could tell one or two stories about some of the things that happened during the construction of Bet Shalom. And as I said, I was not a builder. And why God chose me, I've analyzed that upside down and backwards. But all I can say is that somebody had to be there, and I was willing. I could see the need, and God in his own wisdom asked me. However, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I didn't really, as I say, know about construction or any of these things. So as a consequence, in the first phase, the aren't square. Now, every foreigner that came in thereafter was able to tell me that your rooms aren't square. Did you know that? And I thought, no, I didn't know that. How would I know that? But then as they showed me the floor, I thought, yep, sure enough. Why didn't somebody tell me this? And of course, then I was able to speak to the architects that every detail is important to us. After that, I believe the rooms were all square. There was always challenges with the electric being done in a fashion that was going to last and not have to be constantly repaired. The plumbing, having diagrams, having accountability, in every aspect, because that's really not just um, Canadian or American. It's something that God wants us. He wants us to be accountable for what we do and how we do it. But these things were challenges for the people with whom I was having to work. Um, so yes, we were stolen from. We were um, things weren't as they should be. When the gentlemen came into the young men came in to dig the well, they one of them just about died. Had I not had the foresight to insist that they put on some kind of jacket connected to a cable, because when you're in an enclosed area and you're down 12 meters and there's no ventilation and you've got a pump running, guess what? You can die of carbon monoxide poisoning, or whatever it is that comes out of. See how much I know? Comes out of the pump, uh, gas pump running constantly in that closed space. Uh, uh, so he was hauled up by that cable, twitching, and yet healthy. Eventually, after he got some fresh air. There were many stories. The well itself never really produced a sufficient quantity of water, and the builders call it the well of Rose's tears. Well, I didn't cry, but it was sad that the well that was almost cost that man's life and that was so hard to get done, that it didn't produce the water that we needed. But you know what? God gave us what we needed when we needed it. He's such a merciful, loving God. And to start with, we had a young woman named Sheila Quiros. She gladly, even though we were still in what's called obra negra, which is just the basic structure, basic water, basic electricity, and she did it all for two residents that first came, Ezekiel and Jose. She cooked and cleaned and changed diapers and put to bed, and everything that needed doing. And she was just a little gal, a little Mexican gal, and she did it all. So when someone suggested that she was not a missionary, I beg to differ. This gal was a missionary uh, for us. And for 1 year, that's what she did for two individuals. And she did it well. And then Jose Luis and Monica Aguirre, Gabby's sister, came on as administrators. And we were so thankful with their gifting. They had incredible skills in organization. And we we were able to add some residents. We still only had the 4 rooms. Lots of challenges, lots of learning curves, not just in learning how to deal with a building that was still in process, but also in caring for people whose needs. All people are not the same, just like all children are not the same. All of them have had different experiences, things that made them who they are today. Some of the men had lived lives that were just, they did their own thing. They had many women, many families, and consequently they were abandoned. Others had just been on their own because of perhaps quirks in personality, I don't know. Others were just people that chose to be single. Others did have families, and the families, for a variety of good reasons, just simply couldn't care for their loved one. We currently have one fellow who is cerebral palsy since birth, and his sister was just a year younger than him, and therefore was more and more unable to care for him. And he had to live, when he lived with her, on the floor, so that he could pull himself around and do what he needed to do. And he was quite happy to do so. But there reached the time when she could no longer care for him in that way, and she was sick herself. So he came to Bet Shalom. And there's a story behind every senior. Every single senior has a story, just like each one of us has a story. God created us. He put us in different situations, but what we make of that situation is up to us. It hasn't really got much to do with money. It's got to do with our hearts. And in each case, we see often that our heart, as the scripture says, is wicked. We don't want to make good choices. And the consequences of bad choices we also receive, but also not just us. others around us. And in the case of some of our seniors, the wrong choices affected their families, affected their children, their grandchildren, and eventually came back to be visited on themselves as they were left on their own. Not all of them. Some of the families, well, one or two families are very thoughtful and caring of their family member. So as time went on, we were able to build the entire structure, and we're thankful to God because He's the one that provided. And even though we had to knock on doors, and Elisa had to do those 2 major cycling trips, and Gabby had to take somebody into her house, and I had to, listen to people complain and tell me it will never happen, you'll never achieve it. It only takes a couple to encourage you, and it takes God to say, you know what, it's me. I'm the one that's going to do this, not you. So don't you worry your head about not being a builder or an artist or an architect or any of these things. You're the person that I chose. And I'm really grateful because now, of course, the years have gone by. It's now 2020. We're sitting here in my backyard during COVID. And you know what? Our seniors are being well cared for. It'll be very unlikely that they'll get this horrible virus because of the way and means that we've chosen to care for them. And again, I can only say thank you to God, and thank you to those of you who believed in this. Just recently, we were able to construct a smallish pavilion, but big enough. We hope to have church services and to have events, and for the seniors to get outside and into the shade and see the mountains and the trees, and hopefully down the road some trees and bushes and all the things, because it's one step at a time. And the people that donated for this pavilion, we're so grateful to you. There was a couple of events. Baltasar Ramirez did a street event that he does annually, and to our surprise, he chose Bet Shalom as one of the recipients of the benefits of his event. And others, I can't even begin to name all the people. I think I've mentioned the ones that have made the most significant difference, but there's many. And right now we have Wilbur Martinez is the administrator, and he has been with us 3.5 years, and he continues to be faithful. He is a missionary in the sense that he does not get a salary per se. What he receives is whatever is sent for him, specifically under administration. So if you want to support Wilbur, that's the way you do it. That's the way Jose Luis and Monica were supported as well. And Cynthia Lopez is also there, supported by her church and the church here, and possibly individuals I don't know, lives right on site, and we're thankful for what she's been able to contribute. Our president of the association now is Orlando Morales, and he's been president for some time, and he has been, well, he's been fantastic. He's got a great mind. He's very orderly, and I just thank God for him. Alisa is our secretary. She manages the accounts and sees that everything is in order. Lusai is our accountant, and he makes sure that Hacienda, the tax authority in Mexico, receives what they need to receive. And I'm the vice president and, of course, one of the founders. So, like I said, I've probably forgotten people and forgotten important events and things that happen, but hey, I see that I've already gone 34 minutes, and who's going to listen to this? I have no idea. But anyways, I suppose people who are interested in a little bit of the history of Bet Shalom. If you want to know more about Bet Shalom, we have a Facebook page under Bet Shalom, Hablando Menos, Amando Más, speaking less and loving more. And we also have a web page that is managed by Irene Simpson of Red Deer, Alberta, very kindly offered with a little bit of nudging to do some of that kind of work for us, because I'm hopeless in that area too. And she and a friend in Mexico have been working on this. So you can look at the webpage, www.bet-shalom-hmam, And you should be able to bring up the webpage as well. You can donate online, and we invite donations because that will be an ongoing issue, the provision of the monthly needs, because now we have quite a number of staff. We had hoped to have people, mission-minded people, but that hasn't transpired at this moment. But maybe, God willing, down the road, there will be some of you listening to this who will choose to give your life for a short time or a long time to serving the at-risk senior here in Mexico, near Cihuatanejo, in the little pueblo of Las Pozas. God bless you. He sure has blessed us, and we are so grateful. To him be the glory.